I had lunch with two new partners recently. It's a good conversation, kind that it wanders a little bit. It was entertaining and fun. It was funny and really insightful. And partway through our conversation, we landed on this idea that has really been rolling around in my mind that I wanted to bring here to the podcast. And that idea is that every person's behavior, every identity, every belief that somebody holds on to comes from an incentive to do it. And this incentive isn't always a financial one. Sometimes it's safety. Sometimes the incentive is to be seen as right or correct. Sometimes it's just not having to feel worse about something. It's avoidance. But there's always a reason the behavior keeps happening, even when the person doing it could tell you that they don't want to be doing it. And the thing that hit me after this conversation as I let it ruminate, it wasn't the concept, because I had already kind of known that. I've talked about secondary gains and things like that on this podcast before in my coaching. But what hit me was this, is that almost nobody is honest about what their actual incentives are for their specific behaviors. We will explain our behavior. We'll explain our beliefs. We'll even explain our flaws. But the real reason it's still there, and the thing that's actually keeping it alive, the behavior, the flaw, the thing, that's the part that stays hidden, even from yourself. So today, on this episode, I want to talk about that. I want to tell you about a moment that I had a few nights ago where I caught myself doing this. And it was pretty alarming and jarring when I realized what I was doing. And I've since figured that out and changed it. But before we get into that, you are listening to The Lab. Welcome. I'm your host, Bryce Prescott. Let's get into it. Here's the idea in its simplest form. Every behavior you repeat, every belief you hold on to, every identity you keep wearing, even when it doesn't fit you anymore, it's not random. Something is keeping it in place. Something is making it worth it to hold on to it. And here's what I think is actually going on with most people, including myself for the longest time. We've gotten pretty good at the surrounding skills of this incentive conversation. Things like emotional intelligence. We can name a feeling, we can trace it back, we can understand where it came from, we can understand the first time we felt it. That's one of them. Same with honesty, telling the truth. A lot of people can tell you the truth about what they did and why they did it and how they feel about it. Accountability is another one. Plenty of people will own their mistake. They'll apologize. They'll do the work to repair it. And all three of those things have gotten a lot of airtime, including on this show. Whether it's therapy culture or the conversation around coaching, we talk about feelings. We talk about truth-telling. We talk about owning your shit. And those are real. I'm not discounting any of it. But there's a fourth thing, as I'm discussing, that sits right in the middle of all three of those things, and nobody names it. And that's incentive. Why? Because you can have all the emotional intelligence in the world. You can know exactly why you do what you do, the whole psychological backstory of everything, and still never ask what that behavior is actually doing for you right now today. You can be completely honest about your behavior. Yeah, I do that. And then still never say why and what that behavior is protecting you from, or what it's giving you in your current moment. You can be fully accountable too. Own it, apologize, commit to changing it, and then still not look at the thing underneath it that's quietly making that old behavior worth repeating at some point in the future. That's the blind spot. It's not a lack of self-awareness. It's not totally dishonest. It's more ignorant. Incentive just sits there underneath all of these things. And not one of those three things goes looking for it. It's really fascinating. Here's an example. Emotional intelligence, check. They'll admit it openly. Being honest, check. They'll apologize and say they're working on it. Accountability, check. And then they'll do the exact same thing next week. Why? Because shutting down is genuinely serving a purpose for them. It's giving them something. It's keeping them safe. It's keeping them in control. It lets them avoid saying something they can't take back. And nobody, including them, ever asked what purpose that served. They explain the behavior beautifully. They've never found the actual reason that it stays and what the incentive is for that to stick around. That's the intersection I want to talk about today, where emotional intelligence tells you what to do, honesty lets you admit it, accountability makes you own it, and your incentive is the one piece that's actually explaining why none of that changes anything on its own. A few nights ago, I cut myself in my own version of this in real time. It was small, but it happened, and let me just tell you what happened. I was hanging out with a friend of mine a few nights ago, and somebody we both know came up in the conversation. We started talking about them, what they were up to, the things, their choices, how they're living, all of it. What was going on in their life, the whole thing. And if I'm being honest about it, which is the whole point of this episode, make no mistake, we were gossiping. Not viciously, it wasn't cruel or mean, but it was gossip. And we were talking about someone who wasn't in the room, who couldn't defend themselves. It was in a way that really wasn't helping them or helping me to understand them. It was just commentary on their life, and we were enjoying this moment. At some point, my friend said something to the effect, well, this really isn't gossip. It's more just commentary and kind of reframing it in real time, which it just made it seem like it was more acceptable. We're not malicious in our intent, so it doesn't mean, we're gossiping. It's different, a little more justified, a little more acceptable. And I want to be clear about something. I don't think my friend was being dishonest in some calculated way to allow himself to feel different. I think that's just what most of us do automatically without even thinking about it. We take the thing we're doing, and if it doesn't quite match up with the version of ourselves that we want to be, we will relabel it and reframe it. And sometimes that's totally required and acceptable. Other times, not so much. For example, like gossip, it can become commentary. Avoidance can become, I'm setting a boundary. Pettiness can become discernment. Same behavior, nicer name, nicer frame. And now everybody in the conversation gets to keep their self-image and to feel good about themselves while not acknowledging that they're actually doing the thing that they're not admitting to do. But on this night, there was something going on in me. And in that moment, I didn't want to do that. I go, no, this is gossip. And I know gossip isn't okay, but I'm going to be honest. I'm enjoying gossiping right now. Talking shit felt fun in the moment. I'm enjoying being petty right now. And I have to live with that. That's it. That's the whole moment. I didn't dress it up. I didn't say, it's not that bad. None of that. I didn't reach for a nicer label. I just named the thing that I was doing. I accepted it. I accepted that in that moment, I liked it. It was kind of fun. A little bit of humor that comes with being petty. And in that moment, I wanted to feel right about something, when in reality, I was just jealous. And instead of talking myself out of that, I just let it sit there in the very unflattering way that it did. Fully acknowledging I knew what I was doing, I knew why I was doing it, and I wasn't going to turn away from it and try to make it seem like it was less than. And here's why I think that moment actually matters more than it sounds like it should. Because what I did wasn't really honesty in the way that we usually talk about honesty. I wasn't confessing a sin, and I wasn't beating myself up for it. I didn't perform regret or act like I shouldn't be doing that. I just saw the real reason clearly in the moment. I wanted to feel this small bit of pettiness for a second and to make it seem like I was smarter and funnier for a moment and to say it out loud and not dress it up. It just worked for that moment, even though it's not okay. And me acknowledging that was a big deal for me. And I also recognize something. I'm admitting to being a gossiper in that moment. I'm not asking for any sort of crown that I'm amazing in this way. But I will say that that is a different skill than self-awareness. Self-awareness is knowing what's driving you. And this was something more specific. By being willing to say the unflattering version without cleaning it up first. I didn't need to reframe it. A lot of genuinely self-aware people still can't do that. They know exactly why they're doing something, and they still relabel it or reframe it or give themselves an excuse the second somebody else pushes against it or it's heard or seen by somebody else as unflattering. See, the knowing isn't the hard part. Saying it plainly with no spin, that's the hard part. And I think that's actually pretty rare. I think most conversations about ourselves and about our patterns, and even in coaching, even in therapy speak, they get the explanation, but they don't get the receipt. We'll tell you the whole history of why we do something. We almost never just hand over the actual reason. I do this because of what it gives me. I know it's not flattering, and I know it doesn't say good things about me, but it's true, and I'm telling you anyway. That night, that experience, I feel okay, at least, that I handed over the receipt. I explained, no, we're gossiping, and I'm kind of okay with it right now because every now and then it's funny to be sarcastic and petty, and it makes me feel like I'm smart and witty. And even though that might make me look like a shitty person in that moment, at least I'm being honest with myself and in the moment. Now, I want to take this somewhere else as well. That might seem like a strange jump, but I want you to stay with me. I want to talk about the movie The Dark Knight by Christopher Nolan. It's that movie where Heath Ledger was the Joker and Christian Bale was Batman. I personally think it's one of the best films ever made, but that's for a different day. One of the reasons why that show is so good and why the character of the Joker is so unsettling is because how Christopher Nolan built that character of the Joker. Almost every villain in that film has a visible and legitimate incentive. It's very clear. It's money, it's power, it's revenge. You can predict these incentives because you understand what they want. And once you understand what someone wants, you can negotiate, anticipate, and contain them. Understanding someone's incentives is a key piece of being able to control them. But for those of you that have seen the movie and can recall this, you know the Joker didn't work that way. He says it himself in the film. He's not interested in money. He's not interested in power. And that's what makes him terrifying. Batman spends the whole film looking for the lever. Like, what does this guy actually want? What's the angle? What do I offer him to make this stop? And there isn't one. Not in any conventional sense, at least. The reason's there somewhere, but it's not legible. It's not nameable in the language everybody else is using. And that's what makes a person or a part of a person uncontrollable. Can't govern them. Can't pigeonhole them. It's not his bad intentions that does that. It's the hidden reasons. It's the operating in a way that you can't predict and understand. And here's the parallel. Most of us aren't the Joker, obviously, but there are parts of us that operate exactly like that, unpredictable, frustrating, impossible to talk ourselves out of. It's almost always because the actual reason driving the behavior it hasn't been named. You can talk yourself in circles trying to stop a pattern and then fail every time. Not because you lack willpower, but because you're negotiating with a part of yourself who actually wants what you haven't found out yet. You're Batman trying to offer the Joker money or terms when the Joker was never operating on that in the first place. And this is why insight alone so often fails. Because you can know the textbook explanation for a behavior. Childhood attachment style. Whatever the framework is. And you can still then keep doing it. Because the explanation isn't the reason that it's still happening today. The explanation is the backstory. The incentive is the reason. And until you can find the actual receipt, the specific, current, real-time reason that you're still choosing a certain behavior or identity, you'll lose. Because you're negotiating with a hidden variable. There's no button to push. There's no deal to make. It's just behavior running on its own logic indefinitely. Now, my gossip moment was small, really quite inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. But it's the same mechanism at a tiny scale, is what we're talking about with the Joker and with you. If I'd let my friends reframe stand, if I'd agreed that, we're just talking commentary, it's fine, the real reason would have stayed hidden, even from me, even when I clearly already knew what I was doing. And hidden incentives don't go away because you've relabeled them. They just keep running under a nicer name under the surface indefinitely, in the same way that the Joker kept operating with nobody able to find his button either. Here's what I actually think the personal superpower is in this conversation. It's not emotional intelligence by itself. Well, that is a big deal. Plenty of self-aware people still hide their real reasons for behaving a certain way. And it's not flattering. You can be painfully honest about the wrong thing and still dodge the actual reason underneath you're doing it. The superpower is both of those things together. It's the emotional intelligence to actually locate your incentive, to know specifically what behavior, what it's doing for you, not just the backstory of why it exists, and the honesty to say it plainly without relabeling it as something more comfortable, even when it makes you look a little worse than you'd like. That's what happened with me in gossip. I didn't need my friend's reframe. I didn't need commentary. I just needed to say, no, this is gossip, and I know it, and I'm enjoying it for a moment. Even though it's petty, I get to live with that. There's no cleanup here. I'm not performing something I'm not. It's just who I am. I don't feel guilty, but I don't like what it says, so there's my invitation. And here's the one thing I want you to actually do with this. Not 5 things, just one. Next time you catch yourself explaining a behavior away, especially one that isn't flattering, I want you to notice if you're reaching for a nicer label. Notice if gossip is becoming commentary, or if avoidance is becoming a boundary, or if your ego is becoming your standard. And just for a second, before you let the nicer word land, you ask what's actually driving it to yourself. Name it plainly, fully disclose it. Don't dress it up. Be real. So you don't have to fix it in the moment. You don't owe anybody anything or a redemption arc. There's nothing to redeem. You just owe yourself the receipt instead of the explanation. Let that land. Let the true motivations land. Be honest about it with yourself. That's the whole practice. That's the real reason. Say it straight. Let it be a little unflattering. That's not weakness. That's the rarest kind of strength there is. That is the superpower. We have a lot of work to do on this. So many of us can explain away our emotions. So many of us can tell the truth about ourselves. But we will always put it under the lens of niceness or honesty or benevolence, when not all of us are nice, honest, or benevolent. Some of us are petty at times. And the doorway into your best life, your best understanding, the best version of yourself, is to recognize that that room in the house of you exists. The petty, gossipy, mean, sarcastic, hurtful version of you. And being willing to acknowledge that that's what's driving you in those moments in real time will change everything. My friends, you've been listening to The Lab. I'm your host, Bryce Prescott. And like I always say, until next time, take it a day at a time. I'll see you.